Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be reading some wild Reddit stories while starting a new Minecraft world. But before I start, I wanted to quickly mention that this video style was inspired by a creator called Baby Jamie One. I really love the idea of combining cozy gameplay with internet stories, so I figured I'd try making my own version too. Anyway, let's start with a short one, because this made me laugh way more than it probably should have. I found this on Reddit, and honestly, I don't even know what I would have done in this situation. Am I the asshole for connecting to the earpod after my niece swallowed it to see if it would play in her stomach? A guy shared that his 3-year-old niece accidentally swallowed one of his sister's AirPods. Naturally, everyone started freaking out right away. He said he wasn't trying to make fun of the situation, he just wanted to lighten the mood a little. So he connected the missing AirPod to his phone, walked over to his niece, put his ear near her stomach, and checked if he could hear anything. Okay, I already know this is either going to be incredibly stupid or kind of genius, and somehow it actually worked. He could hear a faint sound coming from inside her stomach. He admitted that for just a second he found the whole thing hilarious. I'm sorry. I know it's serious, but I probably would have laughed too, just for a second. Unfortunately, nobody else thought it was funny. Everyone around him looked at him like he wasn't taking the situation seriously at all. He said he was only trying to calm everyone down, but instead he ended up being the only person laughing while everyone else kept worrying about the AirPod. So he asked Reddit, was I the asshole? Honestly, I don't think so. Obviously, the kid still needed to see a doctor, but if everyone was already taking care of that, I can totally understand trying to break the tension for a moment. Although, connecting to an AirPod that's inside someone's stomach is definitely not something I ever expected to read today. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one starts with someone bringing their own office chair to work and somehow ends with someone getting arrested. So this guy starts a new job selling security systems and CCTV equipment. A few days in, he realizes the office chairs are absolutely terrible. They hurt his back so much that he decides to bring his own chair from home. Not just any chair either, a Herman Miller Aeron. If you don't know what that is, it's basically the luxury sports car of office chairs. It cost him around $1,800. Everything's fine for the first few days. Then he comes into work one morning and the chair is gone. Okay, $1,800 for a chair is absolutely wild. But if I paid that much for something, yeah. I would also notice that it has disappeared. He looks around the office and quickly spots another salesperson sitting in it. So he politely asks for it back. The guy basically tells him to get lost. Thinking there must be some misunderstanding, he goes to speak with the owner of the company. Instead of helping, the owner shrugs and says the office works on a first-come, first-served basis. No assigned chairs. If he wants that chair, he should just show up earlier. The problem, it isn't the company's chair. It's his. He even explains that he personally bought it and that it cost $1,800. The owner doesn't seem to care. I'm sorry, but that's like someone driving your car to work and your boss going, well, guess you should have parked earlier. The next morning, the exact same guy is sitting in the chair again. This time he walks over and gives him one last chance. Give it back, or he's calling the police. The guy laughs, so he actually calls them. A little while later, officers arrive at the office. The coworker admits he took the chair. Luckily, the owner of the chair came prepared. He still had the receipt. Even better, Herman Miller chairs have serial numbers, so proving ownership was incredibly easy. The officers ask whether he wants to press charges. Without hesitating, he says yes. I honestly thought this was just going to end with HR getting involved. Not actual police officers walking into the office over an office chair. His boss absolutely loses it. He tells him that if he presses charges, he's fired. His response? Absolutely. I want to press charges. So his boss fires him on the spot. He simply picks up his chair, walks out of the office, and leaves. Meanwhile, the coworker is arrested. Imagine explaining to your family that you lost your job because you stole a chair. But somehow, it gets even worse. The guy who stole the chair had been working in the security industry for around 15 years. Because of the arrest, he's expected to lose his security license, which means he'll probably lose his career as well. The original poster ends by saying he honestly doesn't feel bad. If someone steals $1,800 worth of your property, they have to deal with the consequences. Then he asks Reddit, was I the asshole? I would say no. If someone steals something worth almost $2,000 from you, that's not a misunderstanding anymore. That's theft. I honestly don't think this one is even close. The boss handled it terribly. The coworker doubled down when he had multiple chances to give the chair back. And somehow they're surprised it ended with police. But I'm curious what you guys think. Was he justified? Or did he take it way too far? Anyway, let's switch things up a little because this next story is actually kind of wholesome. And honestly, after that whole chair situation, I think we all need it. So this woman shares that a few weeks ago, her husband lost his wedding ring in the Mediterranean Sea while they were away on holiday. They searched literally everywhere for it, but eventually they just had to accept the fact that it was gone forever. Ever since they got home, her husband had been really quiet about it. He would just absentmindedly touch his bare finger, look at it, and say things like, I can't believe it's gone. It was completely breaking her heart to see him so down. So she decides to take matters into her own hands, secretly. She somehow tracks down a local metal detector guy living in that specific area of the Mediterranean and asks him if there's any chance he could go out into the sea and look for it. She tells him she will pay whatever he wants, which, let's be honest, searching a whole sea for one tiny ring, the odds were basically zero. But unbelievably, after 2 days of searching the water, the metal detector guy actually finds it. I am not even kidding. He found it. The ring gets posted to her house, and when the package arrives with a Spanish stamp on it, her husband has absolutely no clue. He just assumes she bought something random online and thinks nothing of it. The author wants to surprise him in the most meaningful way possible, but since her husband hates crowds and big scenes, she decides to keep it simple. That evening, they order some Thai takeaway, sit down on the sofa in their sweatpants, and her husband is picking something to watch on Netflix. He's in a bit of a grumpy mood, just having one of those days, you know? The author goes into the kitchen, gets them some drinks, walks back, and sits down right beside him. And as casually as she can manage, she just holds up the ring and says, "So, do you want to put your wedding ring on?" At first, his face looks like he's about to say, "Please stop bringing up the ring. I'm already sad about it." He's still browsing through Netflix, but then he finally looks over and sees it. Instant silence. His jaw drops, and he just stares at it for what feels like forever. He takes the ring, checks the engraving, inspects every tiny detail, and the moment he realizes it's actually his ring, he pulls her into a hug so tight they both literally fall backwards onto the sofa. Okay, I'm not crying, you're crying. That is so sweet. The husband, who usually doesn't show much emotion, couldn't stop smiling for the rest of the night. He just kept turning the ring over in his hands, staring at it. He told her he had completely convinced himself it was gone forever, probably sitting at the bottom of the ocean as pirate treasure by now, so seeing it felt like seeing a ghost. She jokingly asked him if he was happy and if he was still willing to remain married to her. And he just laughed and said, "If you're willing to fight the seas just to make me happy, then of course I would." And yeah, that absolutely melted me. Honestly, major props to that metal detector guy and to her for not giving up. It's just a beautiful reminder that there are still amazing people and happy endings out there. And I truly hope these two will stay happy for a very long time. But now I'm kind of curious. Have you guys ever lost something that felt completely irreplaceable? And I don't just mean expensive. I mean something that actually meant a lot to you. Let me know in the comments. I would genuinely love to read them. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. This one is from Best Off Redditor Updates. And honestly, the audacity of some people never fails to amaze me. It starts with an accident on a couch and ends with a dramatic day in court. Let's see how this went down. So the author has a few friends over at their house, and one of those friends invites another friend along, someone the author doesn't really know. This girl leaves her MacBook lying right on the couch, and, well, the author accidentally sits on it and breaks it. Since it was completely their fault, they feel terrible and immediately offer to pay her back the full amount she bought it for. The laptop was 3 years old and cost $2,200 at the time. The girl agrees, and the author promises to wire the money in a week. But then things get weird. The girl sends an email saying she's actually expecting $2,700. When the author calls her to find out why on earth she added an extra $500, she casually says she expects them to pay for her new upgraded MacBook since she was upgrading anyway. And if they don't agree, she threatens to sue them in small claims court. You leave your laptop on a couch, someone breaks it, offers you full retail value for a 3-year-old machine, and you demand extra money for an upgrade? The entitlement is unreal. The author decides to do some research instead of panicked wiring. They look up the cost of repairing the screen for that specific model, and turns out it's only about $310 plus labor. So they write her back and say, since you didn't accept my initial offer of $2,200, I am officially withdrawing that offer. Instead, I'm offering to pay for the exact repair cost. The girl goes absolutely ballistic, sends an email insulting the author, and a few days later, the author gets officially served. They are actually going to court. So they show up in court. The author stands up and tells the judge the whole story, explaining that they gave her 3 perfectly fair options. 1, a check for a brand new one for $2,200. 2, a refurbished or used one for $1,400. Or 3, paying $300 to fix the current screen. To prove it, the author prints out the entire email exchange where she refused the options, called them names, and demanded $2,700 in cash just to buy herself a better laptop. The whole time, this girl is standing there giving the judge a massive attitude, which, pro tip, never a good idea. It completely pisses the judge off. After listening to both sides, the judge makes his ruling. He looks at her and says she was negligent for leaving a laptop on a couch in the first place. So he orders the author to pay only 50% of the repair cost. The author finished by saying, if it weren't for Reddit, they probably would have paid the full $2,200. But instead, they walked out of court paying only a fraction of that, and said the look on her face afterward was absolutely priceless. Yeah, I don't know about you, but that judge saw right through it. You can't leave your stuff somewhere reckless and then act like it's someone else's full responsibility. But all right, let's move to the next one. So a week ago, this person's neighbor, a 16-year-old girl, accidentally scratches his car with her bike. She stops immediately, starts crying, calls her mom over. The scratch turns out to be pretty minor, gets buffed out for next to nothing at the shop. Since it was clearly an accident, he doesn't charge her or her mom a cent, which already is a pretty reasonable way to handle it. She apologizes. He tells her it's fine. Just be a bit more careful around cars in the future. That's it. Done. Or so he thinks. A few days later, the mom messages him saying her daughter still feels bad, wants to give a proper, more sincere apology. He tells her honestly everything's fine, no hard feelings. She says they'd still like to bring over a cake, just as a small gesture. He agrees, thinks, sure, that's sweet. So they show up. Girl's holding the cake box. Mom's holding her phone. The daughter starts sort of mumbling something about taking responsibility, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Then the mom quietly tells her, go on, give him the cake, ask if he accepts your apology. And that's when you know something's off. He looks at the mom and just asks, are you filming this? She admits it. Yeah, she wants to make a video, says it'll be a great example of young people taking accountability for their actions, offers to blur his face, but says she needs to film him accepting the apology. He takes the cake, tells the girl directly that everything's genuinely fine, that he'd already accepted her apology days ago, then turns to the mom and says he doesn't want to be part of any video. She argues with him, says he could have just let her finish it properly, but he just goes back inside. Now the mom's upset with him, doesn't even say hello anymore when they cross paths. He wonders if he should have just waited the 30 seconds it would have taken to let her record it for the sake of good neighborly relations. But he really didn't like watching a simple, already resolved apology get turned into content. And the girl looked visibly uncomfortable through the whole thing. Yeah, I would say he's not an a-hole, and honestly, I want to sit with this one for a second because the actual apology already happened quietly, privately, the way apologies are supposed to happen. What the mom wanted afterward wasn't really about the neighbor forgiving her daughter anymore. It was about turning her own kid's embarrassing moment into proof of good parenting for an audience that has nothing to do with any of this. And the daughter clearly felt that shift, too. You don't look like you want the ground to swallow you over an apology you're comfortable giving. That's the look of someone who knows this stopped being about her the second the phone came out. Which actually makes me wonder, have you guys ever seen a parent turn a kid's mistake into some kind of public lesson or performance like that? Feels like it's happening more and more these days. Let me know down below, and let's go to the next story. This one is from Petty Revenge subreddit, and honestly, I think anyone who has ever been to a movie theater is going to relate to this on a deeply personal level. So, a few years ago, the author is in a theater watching Inside Out 2. Sitting right in front of him are two women and a young girl, probably around 7 or 8 years old. Throughout the entire movie, these two women just refuse to stop talking and using their phones. And to make it even worse, one of them has her screen on literal full brightness, which... seriously, why do people do that? If you want to stare at your phone, just stay home. Anyway, the author happens to have a pack of gummy worms with him. He's losing his mind, but he doesn't want to waste a full, good gummy worm on this lady. So he comes up with a plan. He bites off half of a gummy worm, eats it, and throws the other half straight at the woman. And he doesn't miss. The woman immediately turns around trying to see who did it, but the author just stares dead ahead at the movie screen like nothing happened. But even after that, she still won't stop using her phone. So a few minutes later, he bites off half of another gummy worm and chucks the other half at her again. And this time she gets absolutely furious. The woman whips around, looks right at the author and yells, "Stop it!" But our author is a pro. He just keeps staring at the screen, completely stone-faced, acting like he has no idea what she's talking about. Then she turns to her friend and the little girl and says, "He's throwing gummy worms at me." All three of them turn around to stare at him, and then they look around the rest of the theater to see who else could have done it. They're whispering to each other, trying to figure it out, when suddenly the little girl points right at the author and says, "Well, it definitely wasn't that guy." Oh my God. The little girl literally became his accidental alibi. That is hilarious. After that, all three of them finally turned back around. The woman dimmed her phone, stopped talking, and actually watched the rest of the movie. At one point, she even disappeared for a few minutes, probably to complain to theater staff, but apparently nothing ever came of it. And I think almost everyone has at least one movie theater story. Someone talking through every scene, someone checking shorts at full brightness, someone answering a phone call like they're sitting in their own living room. I honestly don't understand it. You bought a ticket, everyone else bought a ticket. Why make the experience worse for everyone around you? I'm definitely not saying you should start throwing gummy worms at strangers, but I can absolutely understand why the author finally snapped. Looking back, the author joked that if you ever run into someone talking through a movie or using their phone, maybe all it takes is a little piece of candy flying in their direction. Somehow, it worked. But yeah, let's maybe not turn that into life advice. I don't think theater security would appreciate it very much, but I have to admit, this is probably one of the funniest petty revenge stories I've read in a while. Okay, but let's move on to the next one. This one is from Am I the A-hole subreddit? And honestly, if you have ever been in a relationship, I am pretty sure you are going to feel this deep in your soul. It's about a very specific, universal phenomenon involving fast food and honesty. Let's see what happened. So this guy starts by saying he genuinely feels like he's going crazy over this argument and just wants an outside opinion. According to him, his girlfriend is what he calls a French fry bandit. Every single time they go out to eat, he orders fries, and every single time she says she doesn't want any, until the fries actually arrive. He says fries are actually one of his favorite foods, so whenever he orders a burger and fries, he already knows he's going to lose half of them. Every single time he asks his girlfriend if she'd like her own order, and every single time she says no. I feel like we've all met someone like this. Recently, they went out for dinner. He ordered steak frites while she ordered a salad. Before the server walked away, he asked one more time, "Are you sure you don't want fries?" She said no. So he came up with what he thought was the perfect solution. He ordered an extra side of fries anyway. When the food arrived, he simply slid the extra fries over to her and said, "These are yours." She immediately looked annoyed. She told him she didn't ask for fries and didn't want them. So he shrugged and said, "All right, then I'll eat them." Later, while they were driving home, she told him he was being a jerk. According to her, ordering fries after she'd already said no made it seem like he thought he knew what she wanted better than she did. And, okay, I can kind of understand why she'd feel that way. Except, here's the part that completely broke his brain. She ended up eating every single one of the extra fries. She never touched his fries. She ate the extra order. The exact fries she'd insisted she didn't want. I mean, he literally predicted the future. They've been together for about a year now, and according to him, this happens almost every single time they go out. So now he's wondering, was he actually being rude, or was he simply solving a problem he already knew was coming? Maybe this is just me, but I actually think this was a pretty thoughtful solution. He wasn't forcing the fries on her. He was just trying to make sure everyone ended up happy. If she really didn't want them, great. More fries for him. But after a whole year together, I kind of understand why he ordered the extra portion anyway. Reddit was surprisingly divided. Some people thought he was being condescending. Others felt he simply knew his girlfriend well enough to predict exactly what would happen. And honestly, after reading the whole thing, I'm curious what you think. Personally, I don't think this was really about the fries. It feels more like one of those tiny relationship habits that somehow turns into a much bigger argument than it probably needs to be. But maybe that's just me. Well, I don't know, but let's keep moving. This next story isn't loud or dramatic. It's one of those quiet little revenge stories. So, this author had finally finished writing a PhD thesis. After years of research, all that was left was dealing with the university's formatting requirements before submitting it. One of those requirements was an acknowledgement section. The university made it mandatory to thank everyone who contributed to the success of the thesis. The author explains that the PhD journey actually started out really well. They received a scholarship, built a great reputation, and things seemed to be moving in the right direction. But everything changed after their supervisor unexpectedly retired. Research funding slowly disappeared. Administrative mistakes ended up costing the author around $10,000 in equipment purchases. The university offered very little help, so they were forced to finish most of the research on their own. They even had to pay for some of it themselves using money they'd earned from an entirely different career. Oof. That honestly sounds exhausting. After everything they had gone through, they were now expected to write several pages thanking the university for helping them succeed. And that's when they got an idea. Instead of writing a short acknowledgement like most students, they went all in. 3 full pages. They thanked their supervisors, their family, their patrons, their student counselor, even the flight school they attended. They described exactly how each person had supported them throughout the journey. Then, right at the very end, came one tiny paragraph about the university. The author politely thanked them for teaching them independence, forcing them to learn how to fund their own research, and ultimately pushing them toward an entirely different career. That's honestly one of the most polite ways I've ever seen someone say, "Thanks for absolutely nothing." The best part? According to university policy, the thesis would remain permanently available in the university library and online repository. Future PhD students would likely read those acknowledgments for years to come. That's the kind of revenge that doesn't yell. It just quietly lives on forever. I actually really like this one. There wasn't any screaming, no lawsuits, no huge confrontation. Just someone finding a clever way to tell the truth without breaking a single rule. And I think sometimes that's way more satisfying. All right, this next one honestly made me a little angry, mostly because it involves a 6-year-old and some adults who really should have known better. Let's get into it. So the author's daughter is 6 years old and just started first grade. One day, the school brings in a wildlife instructor to show the kids some live animals. Now, the little girl absolutely hates snakes. The instructor pulls out a snake and tells her to touch it. She says no. Then the classroom teacher steps in and tells her to touch it too. She says no again. But instead of just letting it go, both the instructor and the teacher start aggressively pressuring the 6-year-old. They literally tell her they won't move on with the class until she touches the snake. The poor girl gets so terrified that she bursts into tears and runs out of the room into the hallway just to get away from them. And get this, the author knows this is exactly how it happened because this was the story given by the teacher. The mom gets called into school, and the principal tells her that running out of the classroom without permission is an automatic 2-week suspension. The author is completely stunned. She asks why they couldn't just let her daughter say no to the snake. And the principal's excuse, he literally says they were practicing exposure therapy to help her get over her irrational fears. Exposure therapy from a first grade teacher and a wildlife guy. Unless that teacher has a literal license in clinical psychology, that is not therapy. That's just straight up bullying. The mom explains she can't afford unexpected childcare for 2 weeks and asks if they can waive the suspension. The principal says they will only let the girl back into school if the mother provides official proof that she is putting her daughter in professional therapy for her fear of snakes. Completely frustrated, the mom turned to Reddit for advice. A lot of people pointed out something interesting. If the school was officially claiming they were providing exposure therapy, they might actually be opening themselves up to serious legal problems because neither the teacher nor the wildlife instructor were licensed mental health professionals. And that's probably the moment somebody at that school realized, uh-oh. I'm just going to pause for a second because this lighting is genuinely gorgeous. I could just sit and stare at this for a while, but back to it. About 3 weeks later, the author came back with an update. After reading everyone's advice, she contacted the school district superintendent and explained everything that had happened. The superintendent called back almost immediately. She told the author there is absolutely no way her daughter is suspended for 2 weeks. An hour later, the author gets another call. Her daughter is allowed back into school the very next day. They move her to a completely different classroom away from that teacher, and the author receives official, formal apologies from both the school district and the principal himself. The author mentions she doubts the principal's apology was genuine, but honestly, this one made me feel bad for the little girl. Kids are allowed to have fears, and teaching them confidence is one thing, but forcing them into a situation where they're crying isn't helping anyone. I'm just glad the parents stood up for her, because who knows what would have happened if they hadn't. At least this story had a happy ending. The suspension disappeared, the little girl got to go back to school, and hopefully somebody learned that no is a complete sentence, even when it comes from a 6-year-old. All right, this next story starts off pretty frustrating, but trust me, the ending completely changes how you look at everything. The author says she's completely exhausted. Every single day, her 2-year-old daughter cries for hours, and picking her up from daycare has become something she actually dreads because the crying starts almost immediately. She feels guilty even admitting it, but the constant screaming has started affecting her own mental health. She's becoming irritable, constantly overwhelmed, and beginning to wonder if she's somehow failing as a parent. Honestly, I can't even imagine how emotionally draining that must be. The hardest part is that she's tried just about everything she can think of. More playtime, less screen time, different routines, giving her daughter more independence. Nothing seems to make a difference. And somehow, daycare keeps telling her the little girl behaves much better there, which only makes the author question herself even more. That's probably the worst part. When everyone else says things seem fine, it's so easy to start blaming yourself. About 2 months pass, and the author finally posts a massive update. The title of her update is literally, "She Couldn't Hear." It turns out, after a month of completely losing her mind, the mother finally put her foot down with the pediatrician. For months, she had been telling the doctor that she felt like her daughter's speech was delayed and that some of the tantrums seemed linked to ineffective communication. But every single time, the doctors just dismissed her. When the girl was 18 months old, they said, "Just wait until she starts daycare. She will explode." At 20 months, it was, "Just wait until she turns 2, then she won't be quiet." And at 24 months, it was, "Just wait. One day she will wake up and be talking up a storm." Wow, the classic "just wait" method. I swear, sometimes you really have to be your own advocate when it comes to medical stuff. Eventually, she decided she'd waited long enough. She pushed for a proper speech evaluation and a full hearing test. And that's when everything finally made sense. Her daughter failed the hearing exam. Doctors discovered so much fluid trapped behind both ears that she was barely hearing the world around her. Suddenly, all those tantrums looked completely different. Imagine being 2 years old, barely able to hear people speaking to you, struggling to understand what's happening around you every single day, and not having the words to explain any of it. It wasn't that she was trying to be difficult. She was simply overwhelmed. Doctors scheduled surgery, removed her enlarged tonsils and adenoids, and placed tiny tubes in her ears to drain the fluid and restore her hearing. A couple of months later, the author came back with an update. Her daughter was doing dramatically better. Her speech improved almost immediately, communication became much easier, and while she still had the occasional toddler meltdown, they finally felt normal. And that's honestly such a relief to hear. Looking back, the author realized she wasn't a terrible mom, after all. She'd simply been trying to solve a problem nobody else had taken seriously. Trusting her instincts made all the difference, and because she kept pushing for answers, her daughter finally got the help she needed. In the end, it wasn't bad parenting. It wasn't a difficult child. It wasn't anyone failing. It was simply a little girl who couldn't properly hear the world around her. And thankfully, someone finally listened, and there was even a note added afterward from someone who works in early childhood intervention, reminding parents that if something feels off, you don't need to just wait and see. You can request an evaluation yourself. No referral needed in a lot of places. Sometimes what looks like a behavior problem is actually just a kid who genuinely can't hear you properly. All right, the next story is perfect to end today's video with. It's short and awkward, and somehow ends with the police getting involved. The author says he's been living next door to an elderly man for about 2 years. Really nice guy, lives alone. One morning, he noticed the neighbor's trash bins were still sitting inside the front gate, and the garbage truck was already driving down the street. So he figured, I'll just do him a favor. He quickly opened the gate, wheeled the bins out to the curb, and went back inside without thinking twice about it. Well, it turns out the neighbor wasn't actually home. He'd gone away on a golf trip for a few days. His daughter had recently installed a Ring camera at the front of the house, but the camera only showed someone opening the gate and walking onto the property. It never captured the trash bins. So the video basically looked like a complete stranger casually walking into her dad's yard. The daughter posted the clip in the neighborhood Facebook group, asking if anyone knew who the mystery person was. The author wasn't even in the group, so he had absolutely no idea this was happening. Next morning at 7 a.m., right after he'd been up all night gaming, 2 police officers knock on his door. A neighbor had recognized his jacket from the clip and pointed them his way. So he's standing there, half asleep, trying to explain the entire bin situation, while 2 cops just look at him like he's lost his mind. They're actually fine about it once he explains. One of them even laughs, but by that point, the whole street had already seen the post. His neighbor gets back from his trip completely mortified, won't stop apologizing, which somehow makes the whole thing more awkward than the actual police visit did. The author finished the post with one final joke. I'll never touch another person's trash bins again. And honestly, that's probably a fair lesson after accidentally getting the police involved just for trying to help. I actually love stories like this. Nobody was trying to do anything wrong. It was just one of those ridiculously unlucky misunderstandings that somehow spiraled completely out of control. And I guess that's a pretty wholesome place to end today's story. As for me, I've actually had a pretty productive little session while telling you all this. Found a cave, grabbed some food, managed to put together a full iron kit, went a bit deeper into a mine looking for anything good. Didn't find a ton down there, honestly. But I came back up, set up a bed, and threw together kind of a makeshift little house right in the cave entrance. And, well, I think this view right here is a pretty perfect note to end on. Thanks so much for hanging out with me while we explored this new Minecraft world and went through all these Reddit stories. If you enjoyed listening, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like or subscribed. It genuinely helps the channel a lot. Anyway, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day or night, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.